Hello, my name is Carl Simmons. I'm the curator of woody plants here at Norfolk Botanical Garden. Today we're in the Hofheimer Camellia Garden. Now if you've never been to the Camellia Garden here at Norfolk Botanical, it's something worth coming to see. So the history of the Hofheimer Camellia Garden is that it was founded in 1991 in honor of Mr. and Mrs. Hofheimer, who were members of the Virginia Camellia Society. Back then, they started out with 160 different types of cultivars, and it was planted by a Boy Scout group. And since then, it's grown to over 850 different types of camellias in this garden alone. Camellias are one of the most popular garden shrubs and garden trees that are used in your general landscape. They are very unique because they have a very interesting bloom time. They start in late fall, bloom all winter, and stop blooming early spring, which is very unusual for such a desolate time to have such a big splash of color. There are three basic types of camellias that we have present here. We have our japonicas, sasanquas, and sinensis. Camellia sasanqua blooms in the fall. It's the first blooming camellia that we'll see in the season. It goes until about this time of year, which is January. Camellia sasanquas are also known to have some fragrance that go along with them, which is unique to the sasanquas. Camellia japonica is your bread and butter camellia. This is the camellia that you're going to see most of the time in the landscape. It starts blooming around February and will go until late April. If you're unsure of what type of camellia you have, the best place to start is to see when they bloom. If your camellia is blooming in November and December, it's very likely it's going to be a sasanqua. If your camellia is blooming in late winter, early spring, it's very likely a japonica. Camellia sinensis is the odd one out, where it is not prevalent in the landscape, but it is very significant in the camellia world. All tea leaves that are made from a Camellia sinensis plant. And then they'll add in the different flavors, and there's a bunch of ways to change it from a white tea to a black tea to a bunch of different types. Here are some tips to keep your camellias happy and healthy. The first thing and the most important thing is to keep them well pruned. There are many different styles of pruning, but the most important thing is to keep airflow throughout the camellia. If your camellia is very dense, airflow will not go through it and the diseases will run rampant. You always start the pruning process when the flowering is over with. And it's important to get it during that time because in the middle of summer, the camellias will set their buds, and those will be the flowers that you'll see in the following year. So if you wait too long for pruning, you're going to cut your flowers off for next year. The best time to prune japonicas is from April to May. That's when their bloom time is finished and they're getting ready to set their buds in the middle of summer, but you have about a 2 to 3 month period to finalize your pruning. On the other hand, for sasanquas, the best time to prune them is December to January because that's when they're finished blooming. So now we're looking at a Camellia japonica. We can tell that it's a Camellia japonica because it has a much rounder, larger leaf. It's also a much earlier blooming japonica. It's early January now and it's just started to bloom. So we're standing in a Camellia japonica right now, and we can tell that it's fairly well pruned because it's very open in here. The center of this shrub is very open to airflow, and there aren't many branches that are congesting the center of this shrub. When growing Camellia sinensis, most people aren't growing it for its flowers, they're growing it for its leaves. So the pruning cycle is more dependent on getting a fresh flush of new growth. This is the tea camellia. As you can see, it's fairly shrubby in form, and the flowers are not going to be as impressive. Like I said before, this shrub is mainly used for its leaf. This is a branch from the main shrub itself, but underneath it is just a plethora of suckers that it sends up. So this is why it's considered a fairly messy shrub to have. So we're standing here in front of the Camellia sasanqua, and we know that it's a Camellia sasanqua because it has been blooming fairly early, but we can also tell because it has a much smaller, more narrow leaf. It's still blooming, so it's not particularly the best time to really prune this plant, but if I were, I would be looking for areas that are tightly clustered with branches and leaves. You can select a branch to remove and it won't drastically change the look of the shrub, it'll just make it more airy. I would consider this a fairly well pruned shrub to begin with, so not much pruning needs to take place this year when it's done blooming, but it can always use a few minor tweaks just to maintain its well pruned status. So the Camellia is considered the genus, and Sasanqua is considered the species. Marge Miller is the cultivar. So we can have a boatload of different types of Sasanquas, but the breeder specifically made this plant and named it for its qualities. So its height, its growth pattern, its flower color, its flower type. So all clones of this plant can be sold as Marge Miller. One of the biggest issues you're going to be facing when growing camellias is combating sooty mold. Sooty mold is going to happen on almost all camellia types. This actually is not the problem. It is a byproduct of the problem. The real problem is this white scale right here. This is called Camellia T-scale. Camellia T-scale are tiny insects that have piercing, sucking mouthpieces that will pierce into the leaf, feed on its nutrients, and then secrete a sugary substance called honeydew. That honeydew will then drip onto the leaves below, creating the sooty mold. The best way to treat Camellia T-scale is the application of dormant oil or horticultural oil. The best time to apply this is in the fall or late winter. It's not recommended to spray the horticultural oil in the middle of summer because it can burn the leaves. We mentioned 3 types of camellias that this garden contains, but in reality there are many, many different types of camellias and different hybrids in between those. So just thinking that there are 3 different types of camellias is definitely wrong. So there are many different types of flowers in the camellia world. There are also many different types of flower colors. It ranges from pink to red to white and everything in between. There are also many different types of flower forms. I mean, they can look like a rose and they can look like a peony, and the variety and the diversity is something that makes camellias very special. Thank you for watching. Again, my name is Carl Simmons. If you have any questions, feel free to contact our horticulture department and you can get our information from the website. The best time to visit the Hofheimer Camellia Garden is between December and April, and good luck with your camellias.